Today, I am joined by Sherry Bagley, who's the Executive Director of AE, and Chad Littlefield of We and Me, who is going to actually also be doing the play note for the AE conference, which is upcoming in Pittsburgh in November. And also to note, the other AE connection is that I am a part of the board of directors of AE, and I'm incoming president of the board. So we're going to be talking or framing this conversation around something that Chad introduced, this idea of what's a question that we're super curious to ask? So we are going to be asking each other questions that we are super curious to ask. I'm going to throw it over to Chad and he'll intro it a little bit more detail and then we'll start with him.
Beautiful. So questions are this key that unlocks this door. And behind that door is like a lifetime of your experience. And so what I've learned is that questions are kind of an edit button to what happens next. So you don't know, both of you don't know what question I'm going to ask. But whichever one I pick, it will actually edit the words that come out of your mouth. And the same for you. So we've all shown up super curious to ask each other something with the intent of actually, I hope this podcast for anybody listening actually becomes and feels like an experience, like you're just hopping into the chat with the three of us, which is one of the gems of a podcast. So you ready? Here's the framing. I saw a very funny meme the other day that was somebody going into ChatGPT and saying, "Dear ChatGPT, please summarize all of humanity's knowledge into one word." It's this idea that we like, right? It's like, it's this very silly concept that, people go to ChatGPT and ask for a book summary, and then they feel like they got the experience of reading the book, which they just absolutely did not in any way or any capacity. And I think it's elevated by that meme. That said, Phil, you've interviewed for 5 years all sorts of experiential educators, facilitators, folks running and creating programs that are editing the world through experience. Sherry, you are running AE right now. And so I'm so curious from all of that experience, from your perspective, which is, I think, a very different bird's eye view than most. If you were to break down experiential education into like the 101 class, the 202 class, and the 303 class, what are the essential elements that you're going to share with people in the 101, the 202, and the 303? And I realize this is an impossible question.
This is the whole podcast. We're never going to
7 hours later. Yeah. So maybe we can ping pong back and forth. You don't have to all answer the 101, 202, but I'm just curious what comes up for you. Like when I type into Sherry and Phil's ChatGPT, what pops out as a summary of like the 101? Because I think AE is this beautiful place where people can come from all levels, like 25 years of experience or fresh out of school and you're interning at and I think that's a beautiful community to create, but also like what distinguishes novice to master in this way? Okay. That was a loaded question.
The big one.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
So you're looking for the synopsis of what would be in that class? The 101?
Yeah, in particular, the division of like, what are you teaching like the fresh green folks in a 101 class?
That makes sense.
And then what are you holding back? And then you're teaching them in the 202. And then what are you holding back from them and offering the 303?
So I'll start because I'm percolating on a thought here. I think you might have shared recently, Chad, in an email or something that you have now published like 1 million words via YouTube or something to that degree. I think like I've been doing 5 years of audio. I think about like when I type into ChatGPT, speak as if I was speaking, it can pull from so much audio now. It's a little worrying how much of my voice is out there. But if I was to try to capture all of them, the foundational level, the 101 level that I think will play out in all the levels would be relationships. Like, I think it's so important for new people to form relationships with other people in this. Maybe it's like in this industry, maybe it's with other people or the people that they're working with. There's so many layers to it, but I think like the foundational thing that people should strive to do is form relationships, positive relationships with people in the field. I go back to like, how did I get my job that I currently have? It's because I met Chris Ortiz at a conference and I spoke to him in detail and I built a relationship with him and he hired me for my role here. I think back to how I started in ropes courses. It was someone at a Y who I just made friends with and a mentor at the time who I bought the same sneakers as him, which were Merrell's, which I still wear, Merrell Moabs, because he wore Merrell Moabs and I thought they were cool. So it's just like, it's all like people based. Like that's the biggest advice I could give. And I think like, Because I would have, if I'd have started saying this like 10 years ago, I would have said like, learn activities. Like I would have said something different, but I don't think that that's as important as making good relationships with people in the industry. So that's my 101. It's like foundational if you think about it like pyramid. Anyone can build on from there.
I like that. Definitely.
Well, you can't
I was
take it. You have
thinking,
to pick a new one.
well, I know. Because I was thinking,
Sad.
what is a ditto? Done. I was thinking like of group assessment, how so many jobs you don't look externally, you look at yourself and your own performance. But then when you become a facilitator and you're working experiential education, you're looking at what's happening around you. And you're spending way more time watching than speaking. And you're like, and I think that is a very fundamental thing that sometimes you don't get when you're learning all the games and when you're, trying to do all the safety stuff. Just that idea of like, no, watch what the group is doing, learn from the group, adjust things for the group. So like that whole thought of assessing your group and making sure you are meeting them where they're at and seeing what their needs are. That would be my 101.
I think there's what I appreciate about that is I had a mentor once say to me that the wisdom is always in the nuance. And so you can learn all the basic, like you got the activities, you read the books, you took the course, you did but the wisdom is actually in the nuance, because you can lead, like you've seen multiple different people lead the same exact activity with very different results.
Oh yeah.
Very different framing. And the wisdom is, I think in what you're saying is like, is how they've related to the group. It's the relationships that they set, Phil. And then it's also the being a careful observer is what I heard you say, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
This is cool. These are two answers that I didn't expect for the 101. So let's skip the 202. When you meet somebody who's like 25 years in, they are a master. In fact, you see them as like you've read their books. If you had something to offer them that you feel like is just really a piece of that wisdom in between the nuance, what are you offering 303 in the 303 course on experiential education?
Here's mine, because I've been asking this of every single person that I have on the podcast to an extent now. This is my kind of new thing, is challenge and critique your work. Someone used this phrase and I really liked it, was the critic is the greatest optimist. Critique is not a bad thing. If you're a critic of something, it's because you care. Apathy is the problem there, because someone doesn't care. So if you really care about what you do, you should be able to look at it critically and challenge some stuff you've done in the past. So I ask everyone to look at a way that they've been doing something. Maybe they've got not in a rut, but like they've got into a flow. This is the way I always do it. This is the same activities, or this is the same framing. I know that this works. This knocks it out of the park. If I do this, I get laughs, blah, blah, blah. Maybe just critique some of that and change it and look at it differently. Or I know someone that, Chad, you're familiar with, Romeo Alexandra. She once shared with me this idea that we should mine opposite experiences. So rather than in a feedback setting, rather than just asking for stuff that's positive of like, hey, who loved this? But to actually ask the question when you're running a program, who hated this or who didn't like it, and be open to hear it. Because I think when I first started, I was very critical about receiving critique, like, oh, I didn't like it, judge myself. But now I'm at the stage where I like welcome it, because I think that's a really important next stage in development, is being able to critique your work.
I heard a framing recently that was the folks that really take their practice to a whole nother level, move from the state of, being loved, or you're the person in the group that's like, I want everybody to like this, so I am repelling bad feedback. And the 404 class shift is to being love. So not being loved, but you are actually exuding that love, which is an interesting word to throw into facilitation, but I think it's a powerful one to sit with. Okay, I want to come back to this critic thing, but Sherry, what's the 404 class?
Mine would be, what are you doing to stay curious, or make sure you stay curious? Because I think, again, when you've been doing it for 25 years, it can get stale. You know all the activities, and you don't think you need to learn from other people or learn new things because you have it all. So yeah, just like that idea of being curious about what else is happening out there and what are new things I can be utilizing. And, especially I think as we get more into tech with our facilitation and how we're using it, there's a lot of people that have resisted that for a long time, but it can be super beneficial. And yeah, I don't know, just that curiosity piece, like make sure you're not getting stodgy.
Okay, can we do a quick experience? Can we do experiences on podcasts, Phil? Here we go.
Like
I
Phil's
am
going to
going
say
to.
no to that.
Yeah.
No, move on.
No. Yeah. We're the ALE, the Association of Lecturing Education.
Oh,
So
wow, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a great name.
Yeah.
that's the after party. No. Okay. So I'm going to hold something up in a minute. This was I did this and discovered this experience kind of by accident with a group I was working with. And it like flipped on a switch, which you'll find very entertaining in a minute that I'm using that metaphor. So I'm going to hold something up. And Phil and Sherry, what I want you to do is ask as many questions as quickly as possible, bouncing back and forth. So Phil, you start. Sherry, you start. The questions, the only rule is the questions must be rooted in your natural curiosity. And to everybody listening and not watching, I am holding up right now a blank sticky note.
How many lines?
What's the dimensions between the lines?
Should I read into the fact you're holding it diagonally?
What shade of blue is that?
Would that shade of blue look good on me?
Would it be beneficial if the lines were darker?
And pause. So I used to carry the metaphor that curiosity is like a muscle that we flex and it gets stronger. Like if you do a bunch of squats, your legs get stronger. And I realized that actually curiosity doesn't really work like that. So even though adults tend to ask 95% less questions. So when Will and I were writing the book, Ask Powerful Questions, we dug up some research that kids between the ages of 3 and 5 tend to ask 300 to 400 questions per day.
Confirmed.
Adults, yes, confirmed. Adults on average ask 6 to 12 per day. Now, I know the average describes no one, but the idea being like, okay, I thought that muscle atrophied or we learn more stuff. We know why a red light turns red. And so we don't ask why it turns red anymore. But what I realized is, no, actually, we have the exact same switch in our brain. If you just flip on, you can ask 10 questions about a blank blue sticky note. So for goodness sake, if you have a human being with a lifetime of ungoogleable experience standing next to you, no doubt if you flip the switch, you can start to generate conversations that otherwise wouldn't happen. And so I'm so happy to hear that your answer to the 404 class was get curious, don't get, I think was stodgy. Was that the
Dodgy.
word? Yes.
It's a good British word, right?
It is, yeah.
Beautiful. I cede my curious floor to the next question.
Phil, you want to go?
Yeah. Yeah. So my question is to you, Chad. This got brought up to me, and I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on it. So, charisma. I've heard really good facilitators have charismatic human beings. And I would say, not to put you on the spot, Chad, but I would say you're one of those people. You have charisma. People are drawn to you. When you speak, people want to hear, they lean in, right? Like, as a charismatic person. There's also sociability, which I think is like maybe a skill. Like if I was to say like one is an attribute of a human being and another something you can build up, like a muscle you could build. The question I would say to you is, because I get this sometimes, like, how do you get better at that? If someone was to ask you, how do you become more charismatic or how do you become more sociable? Because I think a part of facilitation is sometimes being able to draw people in. And we know those people who aren't good at it because you go to a room and it's like, they don't have it, right? They're not, you feel it. So how do we get people to have it? Because I get that question like, all right, I know how to run an activity, but I'm not sure I'm a charismatic human being. So is that a skill?
So I will offer one idea perspective on how to be more charismatic, come across more authentically, transfer your energy without draining you, how to transfer your energy to a group. And at a deeper level, I would also love to pose the question, how can people run amazing groups where people don't want to leave, where their lives were impacted, and they don't have to change at all themselves? So they don't have to be or become more charismatic. They can stay exactly who they are. And for that avenue, I want to just like unpack what is the structure of contribution that we're inviting people into. Because someone who's has a super monotone voice and has no charisma and their energy is like, I feel like you're borderline about to fall asleep right now, which is making me really want to fall asleep. Somebody who's like that, I love the design challenge of saying, how do we make their group awesome? Because if their group can be awesome, then the charismatic person is like, their group is going to be off the charts. And so there's only place to go up. So the first bit, how to be more charismatic. I actually almost failed public speaking in college because, which is very ironic now. Seeing that I make a living public speaking facilitating. But Aaron Baku, I'm happy to name the person that almost failed me in public speaking. Dr. Aaron Baku wanted me to use my hands as batons to direct the audience's attention. And I was like, man, this is just what I got. Hands flailing all over the place. These are uncontrollable appendages. This is what you got. And I was happy to take that. That was my lowest grade in college because I maintained my authenticity and still passed with a C, right? When people come up and ask, like, how, like, I actually, for most people, that is part of the energy transfer, the charisma, et cetera. It's the fact that I talk with my hands, my face, and whatnot. That is a big piece of it. And so my greatest invite is to tap into, like, tell the truth that you care about. Because if you care about something, like when I'm talking, if I'm talking about something I don't care about, my hands are in my lap folded because I'm not going to put any effort into that communication. Whereas if I'm super passionate about something, you got me talking about how questions edit the future, I'm going to be flailing. And so that would be one, like, tell the truth that you care about. And so if you notice you feel like you're not all that charismatic, I would first actually tap into what is it that you really care about and what are the things that you know to be true related to that thing. And then start sharing that with people, start offering that to people more. I had a mentor once who said, people love seeing apple trees selling apples, right? It's really weird when somebody, like an apple tree, stands up and is selling oranges. It's like when the person who isn't naturally, genuinely super animated, charismatic tries to do that or tries to mimic my hand motions, they look like a crazy person. And so tapping into that, like, what do you truly care about? Super important. The next bit is like the structure of contribution is if you're super monotone, what if people walked into a room and you had it so well designed that they never even heard your voice for 25 minutes? They didn't even know if you could talk. And so striving for that level of experiential facilitation that people are actually just drawn straight into an experience rather than needing to be drawn into by your charisma. That shift is really huge just from a like intention standpoint with a group. And I also think it's by far the lower effort path. Our mutual friend, Mark Collard, has gotten really on lately about this idea of the lazy facilitator. And he and I share this passion and the idea of like, how can you lead amazing groups that people don't want to leave, that change their lives and not do a lot of work? And sometimes that can help bypass charisma. Okay.
I like that.
Fun
And
question.
I just want to highlight, like, for the listeners, I really like that structure and agendas, which sometimes, and I will be honest, I've sometimes talked against them in the podcast. And I think like it's because of an experience of having more experience. But what a way to be able to bypass something if you just know exactly what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. Like that can bypass some of that. So agendas can be really, really helpful, and structure can be helpful. I know too many people that just wing it, and I know that they can, and I don't. But that's not a teachable skill. Like, all right, well,
No.
what am I supposed to learn from that? Like, don't plan. But like when they pull it off, you're like, well, I guess they could do it, but they're just relying 100% on whatever charisma naturally they have in the moment. And I'm not sure, therefore, they're getting skills. It's, you know, I think trying to think back to high school, where like popular kids and non-popular kids, that's where a little bit of some of my head goes. Because like you almost fail with public speaking, as I've said publicly on this, I'm a natural introvert, and I was not a very popular kid at school. I was the huge nerd. So me going out in front of stage, that I felt like something I worked upon, and it wasn't something I could rely on, where I've seen people rely on and then they teach, and that yet they have never struggled at it. So it's like, how do you teach when you haven't had to work at something? Sometimes but I appreciate your sharing of like transferring that to the group rather than the individual. I mean, like, this can work for me, but maybe not for others.
It even shows up in language, right? So you said a moment ago, like, oh, you know, I get the idea that a master might be able to let go of structure a bit, but the idea of having structure in your language was knowing what you're going to say when you start. And my invitation is switch to what I've now kind of overarching labeled, and there's plenty of overlap with experiential education, but I've labeled the structure that I use to design every gathering the contribution method. And for me, like, point number one in the contribution method is know what you're going to ask the group to do, not what you're going to say. In fact, I'm not actually all that focused on what I'm going to say. I'm focused on what am I going to invite the group to do? And naturally from that flows whatever I'm going to say, because they need to understand what it is they have to, what it is I'm inviting them into that moment. Yeah.
Okay. Sherry, your turn.
Okay. I got to add something to that conversation too, or that question, because I think for the both of you and for a lot of people that I've seen that have that charisma in facilitation, it's the warmth. it's like the genuine like caring and warmth that comes off of you, the both of you, but also other people, other people that have that ability to just make people feel comfortable when they come into a room or a setting. And I think that's more that's different than charisma a bit. Like just the way you smile at people or way you welcome people in can make people drawn to you rather than being, you know, super charismatic. But anyway, just adding that. Thoughts.
It's a
I would just
beautiful
add
addition.
And
to you, Sherry, because I don't want you to eliminate yourself from this. But if I was to read all the happy 6 years messages that you received, was it 6 years?
yeah.
Yeah, of executive directing, the messages received from people, I read through that document and it all suggests similar. So push it back to you. All right, but what's your
Okay.
question?
My question, where do you find inspiration?
I can answer this one. This one is a bit counterintuitive because I now have this like way bigger than I ever thought it would be list of facilitators and trainers and whatnot that I communicate with. But one of the biggest sources of inspiration for me started years ago, which was the invitation that a mentor gave me to unsubscribe from everybody else's everything and sit in silence with yourself. And so I actually try to like be more bored and create more absence of consumption and absence of stimulation. I think there's a book like titled From Boredom to Brilliance that I haven't read, but the title, ChatGPT, summarize boredom to brilliance.
Yeah.
Be bored and you be smarter. It's like, there's the summary. So I'm just actively trying out, and Taylor on my team, like her main role is to try to make more unscheduled free time where there's nothing that I could do if I even tried. Now that's not even achievable, but it's like the aspiration is like, picturing a snow shovel, moving all the potential stuff out of your way, starting with Inbox, which is just the public to-do list that everybody has access to. That's designed purely to take you down many different rabbit holes that almost never are the deepest work that move things forward the most. And so I'm actually experimenting with taking this to like a whole entire another level of creating a separate inbox that won't be subscribed to anything, that I won't share on this podcast, that will be just totally separate. Taylor will actually fully own and respond to chad@weand.me, my current address box. And so I can't even go into that box anymore. And I only see what Taylor has said. I tried my best and I need to pull you in for these 3 things today, which I've historically, frankly, done a very poor job at, because as a connector, I'm like, but I want to respond. I want to be like there and present all the time. And that actually is not, I've realized that's not in service of like greater inspiration for myself and others. Yeah.
Chad, being bored to you, what does that look like? Is that like, I can't imagine you just like sitting still somewhere.
Because you can't imagine that, I do that because I can't, like, if I don't actually literally just sit still. And so I have a specific plop of sand, right near I live right on Lake Erie, and I like the specific plop of sand that I will bike down to and sit at for like 10 to 50 minutes. And my goal is actually literally to not move a single muscle while I'm there. So even like I count it as like, bummer if my finger twitches a little bit or I glitch. And so it's actually just an exercise in literally staying the most still and keeping my eyes closed. Some people, I guess, call this meditation. But keeping my eyes closed, because somebody recently reframed like the only time that your eyes are closed and the only place you have to consume and look is inward is when your eyes are closed and you're awake, which is very rarely. It's like either you're blinking or you're sleeping.
Right.
And so that's a pretty different state for me. And I find a lot of inspiration there.
That's awesome. Thank you, Phil.
Mine is slightly different because I'm an introvert. I use isolated alone time as my favorite place to be in the world. So I have to like step myself out of those places to stretch myself a little bit more. But mine is interacting with people I don't currently know who do the work that we do. That's where I'm getting a lot of inspiration. It's partly podcast related, partly AE. Being able to go to Hong Kong with you, Sherry, it's like kind of opened me up to more of that. And then but interacting with other people who I've just connected either through LinkedIn or I get messages now. The podcast is going long enough that I get messages from people asking to be on, which is really nice. But that means that I get to like know people I've never met. And
Mm.
the thing is it's inspiring to me. I think about this. There's this study called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is competence and confidence. When you start off, your confidence is high when you learn something new, but your competence is pretty low because you actually don't know much, but you think you know a lot. Like, oh, I just found this thing. And you get that sometimes from people who try to introduce something to you, a concept to you, as if they can't believe it. Have you heard of challenge zones? Or something like it's like because they've just learned it and they're really excited to share, which is really awesome. But then as you get like further in your career, you learn more, and then you start to realize how little you know. So my confidence is going down as my competence goes up because I'm realizing like I know very little in the grand scheme of like the facilitative world because I connect with the same people all the time, and they're my favorite people and they're my go-to people. And if I have a question about stuff, I'll ask them and bounce them because they're my mentors, people I've looked up to. And I'm just choosing to ask other people, not my mentors, questions when I have them now because I'm I'm just realizing how little I know. And it made me a little bit, to be honest, I experienced this maybe last year. I had this like sense of panic about it only because I've had imposter syndrome, and many of us do, around like sharing of information. I put myself out there to share information. So who should listen to me? But I built myself up to a point where I thought I knew a lot. And then I've just recently had this like crisis of like, I know nothing. so I'm like, I've gone back in that journey. But that's what's inspiring me now. Like I get really, really, really excited about meeting new people in a way that I hadn't for a while because I just feel like I'm kind of rebuilding a reserve of excitement around the industry because I realize I don't know as much as I thought I did.
Yeah.
It's beautifully circular back to your definition of experiential education 101, which is it's all about relationships. It's like you're now connecting the two, and you're on this journey of experience for yourself, which structurally, like doing a podcast, you get to build relationships as a form of like pathway shaping.
I just interviewed someone we just had come out yesterday. I don't know if this won't be yesterday for people listening, but the 25th anniversary of High Five, the organization I work for, we're celebrating that this year. And so I interviewed someone called Nikki Hall. She was one of the founding members. People who are listening to this, they may not know her. She's someone I wish more people knew. I think we all probably experienced that. Know people that were just not in the spotlight people. They had no desire to be, but they taught us, and we just wish more people knew and could speak to them. She's in her early 80s. And the main thing that she took away from a lifetime of doing this work was the people. So that's like, what was the thing that impacted you the most in your entire career? It was the relationships you made on the way. And it's like, okay, so therefore that's the answer to all of it. Nothing more is needed. If I can take that from someone who's a tail end or the other end of their career life and they're telling me that, then I'm like, all right, that's the thing.
Beautiful. I think I actually want everybody to do this exercise where because if you ask anybody, where are you going to be in 5 years? No one actually knows the answer to that question. But if you ask people, where were you 5 years ago? And then draw me a map of the people that led you to where you currently are. You could do that. Like that's an exercise. You could actually draw a map with little bubbles with people's names on the inside of like, well, I'm going to talk to this person. And for me, it's not, on a cynical lens, this could be called nepotism. Like you got to where you are because of people that you knew. But what I appreciate about that is I realize there's limitations to the choice around the people we meet, but it is one thing that you do have some degree and a decent degree of autonomy over. Like if you reach out to somebody, they might say yes, and you get to choose whether you reach out to them. And so I think in terms of like editing one's future, going to people from a state of curiosity with a single question is often like the cheapest, most controllable way to guide your future to a path that is like both unexpected and really quite joyful too. My goodness.
We have gone very deep.
Can I feel like we've all asked a question.
Good.
And Phil, maybe you're going to like close down somewhere soon, but can I like zoom in on something that I'm trying to get better at? And then can we practice it live with like AE Pittsburgh in mind?
Yes.
So Priya Parker, who wrote the book, The Art of Gathering, talks about the value and importance of coming up with a clear and disputable purpose. And then she adds to that of like using purpose as your bouncer for like who gets in and who gets out, or who is like not invited, but who is like doesn't want to come because this is the purpose. Right. So for example, I'm hosting this Connector Summit in December, and my brother asked me this morning, like, what's the clear and disputable purpose? And for me, it was like, creating one of the very few gatherings where the only people there, their primary responsibility is leading and running groups. There are like things like there are organizations like AE and the International Association of Facilitators, and there's like a few others, but there's not actually that many, and they're quite niche. And yet this category of people has a very outsized ripple effect, right? So like if you ask everybody at AE, maybe we'll start off like this in the plain note, like how many people would you estimate in the next year you're going to actually facilitate or have some impact on? And so for every person there, that might be 1,000 people. And so you got 300 people in the room. This is 300,000 people directly affected by the folks in this little intimate, international, beautiful gathering. And so I'm curious for you, like what is, and this isn't written in stone, but for both of you, like Phil being on the board, Sherry, executive directing for this year in Pittsburgh, what is not the only one, but what is a clear, disputable purpose for AE and why anybody would turn up to a thing like that?
I think, well, we have a very defined purpose in our ends, in our policy, and it's to convene this group of experiential educators. And it says convene, just like so in any way that looks, right? So when we have webinars, all of those things. But I think the purpose is to gather the community. It's like in so many cultures that happens, once a year you all come together so you can experience each other, you can reconnect, you can connect with new people, you can do other things. And so the purpose is to be together. That's it. I think, the sharing of knowledge, all the things that come out of the conference or are parts of the conference are there. But that purpose is to be together and enjoy each other and be a community. So we did 2 virtual conferences during the pandemic, and those were well attended, and they were great in what they could do. But our community is one that really, they want to be in the same place. We want to do the things. So, yeah.
Which I'm appreciating that clear, disputable purpose is literally Phil's definition of experiential education. So to convene experiential educators to literally be experiential education in the room based on a relationship. Cool. I'm excited to be there.
Yeah. Phil, what do you think?
Yes.
And full circle, ditto.
Yeah, what she said. Yes. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Like I try to think back, like why I got into AE, or like what drew me to AE more than maybe other organizations. And you referenced, Chad, there are a lot. There are a lot. They're all like niched. I think sometimes we've done a disservice in the past of the micro niching of different things. Like, oh, we had niche this and niche this. But like for me, it's like everyone has very similar whys. Something that I've been saying in workshops recently is I believe that we connect more with our whys than we ever do with our whats, whens, and wheres. What I find is when you go to conferences, the whats and wheres are often on your name tags, like your name, your location. And then sometimes you go to places where they'll say, how many years have you served? Those are all whats, whens, wheres. They don't truly connect people as much as the whys connect people. Like, why are we here? Like, what centers us? So I always think that I'm so excited by the fact that like there's so many people who are different, who all have the same why, so you end up finding your people. And that's the phrase that gets used a lot. Like, oh, we found our people.
These are my people.
And I think these are my people. It's like, oh, you found your people. And why is that? Because you all have the same why. You do different work, but it's all centered around exactly the same thing. You use experiential education to benefit or better the people that you work with, and you found it to be the most effective way to do so. So people get jazzed about it. Mm-hmm. That's our why.
I love thinking about all the other stuff is on your name badge and maybe the logo on your shirt or something, but the why is like in the logo of the association that's there. It's like we're all here because we believe that experiential education has an outsized impact on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. And there's something very compelling about the why actually being like plastered on every piece of whatever, every sign, every email, everything like that is actually embedded at some level is the why.
Hopefully, if people are listening to this, the three of us, will get to see you in person if you're there in Pittsburgh,
Woo woo.
which would be really, really awesome. And hopefully the takeaway from this is, I just want to add this, like the reflection on this experience to me, just you priming us to say, like, what is something you're curious to ask each other? And for us to take that time prior to being here to write down some questions. I actually found that a very enjoyable experience, just taking a moment before this and writing some questions down. So I encourage people to do that with people that they work with, their peers, their friends. Just find some stuff you're curious to ask and just spend the time to ask those questions. It can be a valuable experience. So thank you to
switch. That's it.
Yeah. We're going to stay on and ask all the rest of the questions, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Because I have more now. I have so many more.
Yeah, that was the intro to the podcast. This is actually a 12.5-hour podcast.
And now my music kicks in. And then just like, can you imagine? That's so funny. All right. Thank you, friends.